Work? It gets what?
Good. Try it.
Good morning. Oh, there we go. Good morning, everyone. Going to call this meeting of the Insurance and Real Estate Committee on February 24th to order. We welcome everyone. Before we begin, any opening remarks from my co-chair? Senator Huang? We're good. Anybody else? Nope. Okay, we'll jump right in. Our good friend, my good friend, who represented district, Mr. State Representative Seth Bronco. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Good morning, Co-Chair Senator Ferraro. Good. There we go. Testifying on HB 5264, Section 1. You have my testimony, so I'm not going to go read through it all. I just want to paint a little picture for you. And I want you to imagine that you are a landlord. You own a property, and you have a no pets policy. And you rent your house, apartment, whatever, to a tenant. And mid-lease, they come to you and say they need an emotional support animal. And once they are able to show their letter from a provider, you have no choice but to accept the animal. So you say, okay, get your emotional support animal, and then they choose a pit bull. You, as the landlord, have no discretion there. You have to allow it. You can't stop them from choosing what they choose once they show that they need the emotional support animal. But now you, as the landlord, are in a predicament between that and an insurance company that can now drop you because of a pit bull in your house. Now, these emotional support animals, service animals, are federally protected. You don't have a choice there whether to allow them or not. Now, on top of that, tenants are protected from a lapse of time eviction because of their disability. So even at the end of a lease, you can't then say, listen, I can't have this pit bull in my house, I'm moving on. You are stuck with that dog in the house. As long as they're following their lease, that dog is in the house. But now you are at the mercy of your insurance company of whether they're going to drop you or not. And then on top of that, you can't even charge pet fees or deposits because these are not considered pets. They are assistance animals. So landlords are now in a spot where they have no choice in the matter. They can't discriminate. However, insurance companies can discriminate against them and drop their policies. So this law seeks to give landlords a protection there to disallow insurance companies from being able to discriminate against the property owner for assistance animals or service animals in the home, regardless of breed. So I think it's a pretty simple loophole to close, and I think it's narrowly worded enough that this is not a massive problem. So we're not talking about a major burden on insurance companies, but we have to protect landlords in these positions through no choice of their own because of these federally protected animals. So I hope you'll consider it and support the bill. Thank you.
Your phone does not want to cooperate.
Just hit that one.
That one. Got it. I'll get it to work. Representative Wood.
Thank you, Representative Bronco, for submitting this bill. It seems to make some sense here. I was just wondering if you can walk us through, as a landlord, the difference between, so if someone has a service animal, you basically know that up front because they are using the animal to help them through a disability, correct?
That's correct.
And a therapy animal, you gave us the story of mid-lease. There's no animal, but then mid-lease, hey, I need a therapy animal. Can I just go get a therapy animal and say I need this for mental health? Or do you have to get a doctor's note? Like, walk us through what that means for you as a landlord, how you define a therapy animal in a real life situation?
Yes, so an emotional support animal, if you have a mental health provider and you're going for counseling or whatever, and you come to the determination that the doctor thinks you need the emotional support animal, once they provide a letter stating that, you are allowed to get one. And no one can tell you no. So that could be at any time. So yeah, mid-lease, you might not know that going in, but even if before you lease it to them, if they had that letter, you can't deny them. You can't discriminate because they're not pets.
And does the doctor say it has to be a dog or cat, or can it be other types of animals?
I'm pretty sure, according to law, you could pick whatever animal breed you want. So I think right now the language we have is particular for a dog, but if you wanted to get a llama for an emotional support animal, I think by law you can.
Okay, we'll have to look into that, because that sounds interesting, I'll just say, to say the least. So can I go to the store and buy a therapy coat or wrap and put it on the dog and say that it's a therapy or an emotional support dog, and then you as a landlord have to accept that, or do you require, or does the law say it has to be a doctor's note?
It's a good question, and honestly, there should probably be a broader discussion around emotional support animals because there's a lot of abuse of it. I think to skirt no pets policies, but by law, once you need, a landlord can require that letter from the provider saying it's their recommendation you get one. So there's certificates you can buy online that say, oh, here's my certificate for my ESA. Well, that's not legitimate until you have that letter from the provider.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, Representatives. Representative Meskers.
I want to thank you for the testimony. I think as we go forward in life, you can see that pets are becoming more and more important. I take it from my childhood where, and I joke with my children, when I think the supermarket, you were lucky to see a quarter aisle of pet food. And now you're getting to 1 to 2 aisles of pet food, and everything seems to be shrinking and going that direction. So I'm interested in what you're proposing here, and I think it has merit. I would suggest going forward, we also look at the issues of emotional support and on the legal framework of the emotional support. I understand there's federal regulation. I want to make sure we align with the insurance companies of when there is an issue with an emotional support animal and at what level they pose a risk to the other tenants in the building to make sure there's recourse as well, because I'm not sure we're very good on those types of steps either, that if someone has incidents of aggression towards other residents, so I think I don't want to gum up where we are on this, but probably going forward, since you obviously have both passion and interest in this, I would suggest probably we go forward in the future to look at and that may not be the purview from the insurance committee, but maybe we work with general law to make sure that the insurance companies are comfortable with those types of animals that are now going to become residents of, or that you need to get insured, to make sure we're comfortable on what the precepts look like that cover the legal and the liability. Because I don't want to see your rates go up, because ultimately it's going to affect, what people need to understand is the property owner's rates are going to go up, the liability is going to go up. It's invariably it's going to increase rentals prices too. And we're trying to make the state affordable. We want to have reasonable laws for that. So I throw that at you as a follow-through potentially.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think it's a perfectly fair conversation to have. We don't want to expose insurance companies to undue liability. But at the same time, we're exposing landlords to an impossible situation that they're in through no choice of their own. So I mentioned I think it's narrowly tailored enough that this is not going to cause widespread liability cases to skyrocket. I don't know how many might be worth the research, but how many pit bull emotional support animals there are. But I think it's narrow enough that it's not going to send shockwaves through the entire market.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Nuccio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is something that I've been interested in for a while as a broader context about insurance companies and breed discrimination. What I think is important here, so can you talk about a little bit, as a landlord, you have to have a higher insurance policy anyway, correct?
Generally, yes. Yeah.
Okay, so in this case, you don't have an option. Somebody has a service animal, it's not considered a pet. You have to allow it in your building. You cannot tell the person that, we don't allow animals here, so you have to leave. If they want an emotional support animal that's a boa constrictor, you have to allow it, right? You do not get a say as to which kinds of animals are allowable in the unit that you own, and you have to insure it at a higher level anyways. So if they decide they want, a Rottweiler or a pit bull or a chow or any of these other dogs that are commonly discriminated against by insurance companies with absolutely no data, by the way, and they say, okay, now, even though you're paying a higher insurance, we're going to triple it or we're going to drop you, you have no recourse in that matter, do you?
No, the animals are federally protected. The landlords are totally exposed.
Right, okay, so you can't say this person has to leave. You can't say you're not allowed to have that kind of animal. You can't say, across the board, I'm gonna increase your rent because now I have to pay higher for you, because that's discriminatory. In the landlord's case in this, you're the one who is now at risk, because if your insurance company drops you, I have been infamously told in this building that it doesn't matter that insurance companies discriminate against these kinds of animals, because there is at least one insurer in the state of Connecticut, which is an insurer of last resort, that you can go and get a policy from that is typically, historically, 3, 4, 5 times the regular insurance rate. But as long as you can get that, it doesn't matter. So if they come forward and give you a rate that is, say, 4 or 5 times your insurance policy, now you have to raise rents for everybody in your unit to cover this higher policy, because somebody has an emotional support dog that the insurance companies deem is a bad dog. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, and what's almost ironic is if you had a pets policy, you can charge pet deposits, a pet rent, extra fees for having the animal in your house, in the house. But a support animal, you're not allowed to do any of that. So you bear the burden of extra cost without being able to even pass that on to the owner, because again, they're not deemed as pets.
Right. Okay, so this bill would then be narrowly looking at specifically saying, if you're a landlord and somebody comes in with one of these emotional support animals that causes your insurance to increase, and there's nothing that you could do, we're basically saying we're not going to allow them to do that. Right, we're gonna across the board say that that's not allowable, because this is not a situation of your making, correct?
Right, we're saying, you landlord, you have no choice whether this animal is in your house or not. So you insurance companies cannot discriminate against that property owner for being in that position. It puts them in an untenable, pretty unfair situation through no doing of their own.
So if, is it common for your tenants to have apartment insurance? Do you require that?
Most landlords, I would assume, do, yes.
Okay. In that case, would you think it would be a fairer practice to say that that liability has to fall on the apartment holder, that their insurance policy would be the one that would be increased to cover the liability of said emotional support animal?
I would think that makes sense. I'm not a legal expert in liability, so I don't know if that would fully protect a landlord in the situation, but it would make more sense that they should bear the liability above the landlord, yes.
Okay. Thank you very much for your testimony. I'm highly supportive of this. I think it's just one step in the right direction for what insurance companies do in regards to breed-specific policies, especially ones that they can't support. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. I think Representative Nuccio is online, and then Senator Wong after. Pavlik D'Amato, sorry. Representative Pavlik D'Amato?
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Hi, Seth. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Great, thank you. So, all right. So in this case, then, what did you do? And I guess that goes back to Tammy's and another question of mine, which is, were you forced to get another or a higher premium, or did you just not have coverage? What did you do in that case?
In this situation, the tenant ended up leaving on their own, but it leaves you in a position that if you were going to go shop around for rates to try to find different rates, and that was then reported, you could lose your insurance entirely.
So, but they left on their own. Why did they leave on their own? The tenant.
They bought a house.
Oh, okay. Um, and that goes to another question then. I don't recall seeing a law where, if there's a direct, and I imagine even if this went in front of one of those tenant rent boards that some of the towns have, and like in this case, there's definitely, okay, you get that, as Tammy said, the higher premium, right? It goes up 10 times because of that tenant. That can't, you're saying under Connecticut law, be passed on to the tenant?
By increasing the tenant's rent with the support animal?
Yeah.
I mean, theoretically, you could. Depends on how much you raise it, because then they can make that complaint to the rent review board, and it could be denied. So, I mean, you can raise the rent. I mean, not mid-lease, but you can raise the rent when you go to re-up the lease.
Right.
But
Well-
the amount would be, up for discussion, I guess.
Well, then actually you're going to have to make up for the months where you couldn't collect the rent, right? I'm sorry, where you couldn't collect the increased rent due to the increased premium. Yeah, I just wanted to check on that because I didn't recall seeing any specific law that we have that precludes that. Although going in front of the rent commission, I imagine I'd be surprised or not surprised if they wouldn't allow an increase, even though you have a direct expense that's related to something very specific. So I'm looking, I do like the bill. I really pushed for it in screening for us to raise it because you gave the example of that this is happening and it's a concern. And, I don't want people not to have places to live. I don't want landlords not to be able to get insurance. But do you think, and you said that they weren't deemed to be pets, and I can agree with that, right? But maybe we also need to look at how we're categorizing this this event or these things, I'll say, and maybe go to calling them animals as opposed to, because they're not pets, or some are pets, some are service animals, but either way, it's an animal, right? And it's going to be treated a certain way by an insurance company. So I don't know if maybe looking at that definition and changing the statutes we have just to encompass all of them is something we need to look at. But I do thank you for bringing this issue to our attention. And just out of curiosity, how much, when you looked for the premiums or the policies that would cover it, how much did it go up? Do you have a dollar amount when you did that research?
Not an exact figure, but early shopping could have been 2-3 times the amount. And just one thing, I'm pretty sure the definition there for classifying them as assistance animals is federal. I don't know that we can change that classification, but not positive on that.
Yeah, and I think because I've been looking, I know, dealing with landlords and the definition of, or this whole issue, let's say, of service and yeah, since it's intertwines with federal law, and I know that's something that we struggled with years ago in dealing with this issue. So yeah, I think it's going to take a deeper dive, but I think if we can do something to address this, because I don't think it's in anybody's, right, tenant or landlord's interest in not having insurance at all. So, something I hope really we can push through in this session. Again, we have a state full of tenants. We have a state with many landlords, and I'd hate for something to happen and there not be any coverage at all. And really, that's what we're facing right now. So thank you again for your testimony.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Senator Wong.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative, good to see you. Just clarifying, as you gave the testimony, and I'm reading your written testimony, I want to be clear that you are in support of this bill.
That is correct, particularly Section 1.
Okay. And one of the points you raised, just to clarify, it is not a reflection of companion animals or service animals and the important role that they filled in this. I think it's more of addressing landlord protection under federal statute that now needs to be considered as a growth in companion animals has been put into use, that landlords in their consideration predicated by federal law needs to be their considerations need to be addressed in regards to some of the exclusions, and particularly the penalty area on the third-degree assault clarification. Can you give me some interpretations of that and what you thought about that as you in support of this bill?
I think I don't know what you mean when you're talking about third-degree assault.
Let me clarify. The testimony on this bill, I believe what section was in regards to, bear with me, I'm sorry. There was a criminal offense aspect to this bill, correct? Yes. Through you, the LCO, that is on section 3. Yes. Can you clarify a little bit your understanding? Yeah, but he's testifying on this bill as a whole, and I just wanted to get. Okay, all right. Getting the guidance from the chair, I'll withdraw my question to you. So you're focused on section 1.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, we create kind of a middleman, and we leave the landlord just absolutely exposed. So just trying to close that loophole because of the protections that particularly service animals and emotional support animals are provided that landlords then are not.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. Any other questions online? Nothing?
Mr. Chair?
Oh, Representative Pavlik?
Yeah, if
Tomato.
I could just say one more thing. I know the good senator and representative both said about landlord exposure, but we have to remember here that there's also not only tenant exposure, but if there's any guests, let's say somebody gets bitten by the dog, if they don't have insurance, then those people are exposed as well. So this is just as much about tenant and guest coverage and protection as it is landlord. So just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
That's a good point because if this so in the example, if the tenant gets a pit bull and now is living in a building with small kids, I mean, yeah, you're leaving other tenants exposed in that manner. So yeah, it's a good point.
Thank you, Representative. Any other questions for Representative Branco? Seeing none. Thank you, Representative.
Thank you
Appreciate
all.
your time. Up next, we have Ronner, hope I'm pronouncing your last name correctly, Reck.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Hi, Kanika. Good morning.
Awesome, thank you. Hi, good morning to the chairs, Senator Cabrera and Representative Wood, vice chairs, ranking members, and members of the Insurance and Real Estate Committee. My name is Connor Reck, and I'm here today on behalf of the Insurance Association of Connecticut. The IAC is a state-based trade organization representing Connecticut's property and casualty insurance and life insurance industries. The IAC is opposed to Section 1 of HB 5264, which concerns underwriting practices in homeowners and tenants insurance policies involving service and therapy animals. We would first like to thank the committee for including the word solely in the language of Section 1. This language mirrors the intent and structure of the NCOIL Model Act on dog breed insurance underwriting. The inclusion of solely acknowledges that underwriting decisions are multifactorial and actuarially driven, and that insurers must retain the ability to assess actual exposure to losses. We recognize and respect the critical role that service animals play in assisting blind, deaf, and mobility impaired persons. Service animals are trained to perform specific tasks and mitigate a disability. These animals undergo training, socialization, and behavioral conditioning to remain calm, focused, and well-controlled in public settings. This category is more closely aligned with existing disability law. However, the IAC is concerned with the same underwriting limitations being extended to the ownership of therapy animals. Therapy animals do not necessarily undergo the same standardized task-based training as service animals, nor are they limited to assisting individuals with specific physical impairments. The broad definition may encompass animals that lack consistent behavioral standards or formalized training requirements, and by expanding the definition beyond service animals, insurers could be required to accept risks involving animals without clear training benchmarks. The IAC is also concerned with the broad liability framework within which this provision would operate. Connecticut is a strict liability state for dog-related injuries under Connecticut General Statute, Section 22-357. Under the statute, a dog owner is liable for injuries caused by a dog regardless of negligence. When such claims are litigated, fault is not the issue, damages are. If Section 1 is to be enacted, equity requires that the legal standard governing dog bite liability be amended from strict liability to a negligence standard. This framework would allow insurers to defend claims based on the facts and circumstances of the incident, including whether the owner exercised reasonable care and control. I will also note that not all insurers consider dog breed as an underwriting factor, and Connecticut's homeowners insurance market is competitive and diverse. For those carriers who do utilize dog breed or other animal-related factors as a part of a broader underwriting assessment, restricting those tools may lead to premium adjustments to account for the inability to differentiate risk. In practice, this can result in costs being spread across the entire pool of policyholders, including those who do not own a dog. We respectfully urge the committee to reconsider the expansion to therapy animals, and if Section 1 is to be enacted, to amend Connecticut's dog bite statute to replace the current strict liability standard with a negligence standard. It is only equitable that insurers be able to defend if they are required to cover. Thank you for these comments, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Representative Meskers.
Thank you very much for your testimony. I think we probably have, if not a fundamental, or I have, if not a fundamental disagreement, concern here. You know, we're trying to adjust to the federal law, the burden to the landlords from the changing legislation in terms of coverage for insurance. And I guess your concern is the socialization of the cost by making it mandatory. So I heard some suggestions about what carve-outs could be. I'd like to have, you know, further conversations about, in the event we go forward with this legislation, you know, how we certify and protect landlords, the insurance companies, and the people who ultimately become victims of a bad situation. You know, we've got a liability issue. The question of who wants to cover that liability, and if we mandate it, you know, and what recourse do we have, going back to the issue of if it's a therapy dog or therapy animal and it's engaged in certain behavior, what recourse does the landlord have to either cancel the lease or protect the other residents of the building? So there's probably more nuance that needs to be developed, but you know, I understand your concerns. Your concerns ultimately that you're being forced to cover something that you wouldn't normally cover and you're going to raise rates. I mean, is that the essence of it?
Well, yes, it's important to just be able to assess that. If insurers are required to cover, they're not going to be able to, like I said, differentiate the risk, and so that those costs are going to be spread across people who own dogs and don't own dogs, because they have to account for the potential risk there, and so the money needs to come from somewhere. So, but we are definitely open to continuing conversations.
Yeah, to my mind, the conversation needs to be related to legal liability, recourse. if the coverage is mandated, recourse to both the landlord, the insurance company, and accountability of the tenant to make sure that if it's deemed a dangerous situation, there's resolution, so that we're not paying out extraordinary amounts and raising rents and raising insurance costs into an unacceptable level. But I'm not sure that providing no recourse to landlords or not looking at a mandated coverage of some type is the wrong way to go. I mean, when we look at coverage generally, it is a coverage for whether it's illness, whether it's liability. Most of the time, it's a socialization of a cost, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Meskers.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Up next is Ms. Marlene Wilhelm. I believe it's remote. Marlene, are you on?
Doesn't look like Marlene is on.
Okay, moving on to the number 4, Rachel Baird. You made it.
Good morning. My name's Rachel Baird. My office is in Rocky Hill. I'm an attorney, and I live in Weathersfield. I was here last year on March 4th, 2025, to testify in support of a bill similar to HB number 5265. I'm here to address the first section of that pertaining to court-ordered accountings of common interest community financial records. Last year, prior to testifying about the situation at Westage Condo Association in Rocky Hill, which involved a property manager that had been charging $95 an hour when everybody thought it was $65 an hour because that was the contractual rate, and also self-dealing business to his cell phone company, I thought that I should, prior to testifying, go to the Department of Consumer Protection so that I could represent that, yes, I have tried remedies available at the law. So I did go January 2025 and made a complaint to the Department of Consumer Protection. I didn't mention that last year in March because it was early in the complaint process. I would like to report on the complaint process in support of this bill, which empowers condo community owners when they believe there are financial improprieties going on in their condo community to be able to address those financial concerns. I was the attorney for Ed Peruta, who will be testifying shortly, and we did try to take our concerns about the financial improprieties at Westage Condo Community to the court ourselves. And we found out that an individual condo owner does not have standing to bring these kind of claims. Only the board can do so. Well, what happens when the board, for whatever reason, is not taking action to address the financial improprieties? Do they just go on in perpetuity? And that's why this bill is important. No, if at least 20% of the condo community owners have evidence that they can bring to a forensic accountant to show that there is a reasonable belief, I should say, that financial improprieties are going on, this would allow that 20% of unit owners to go to the court and seek relief to get records, because what we experienced at Westage from 21 through 24 was we weren't able to get any financial records. We had no invoices, we had no hours spent we had no manpower, we had no cost of goods to do the repairs. Everybody was in the dark. So that's why I support this bill 5265. So let me go on in attempting to use the regulatory resources that are available. The Department of Consumer Protection does do investigations into complaints about community association managers, which is the term for property managers. We filed our complaint in January 2025. It is still pending. Okay, so about a month ago, the Department of Consumer Protection attorney called me and Ed Peruta, and we met with her. And apparently there may be a public hearing or a compliance procedure going forward. Now, I believe that during the past year, I try not to email consistently people in government that are doing their job, because I don't want to be seen as somebody who, oh God, it's her emailing again. So we did give the Department of Consumer Protection opportunity to investigate. But unfortunately, every couple months when we would follow up, it seemed like they were kind of back at square one. So what I did in preparation for today's testimony was I made FOI requests through the FOI portal for all the case numbers of closed cases and case numbers of open cases, because I was going to do a chart and see, okay, well, are they overloaded? Are they overwhelmed? Because we keep hearing, oh, they have 100 cases per person, they can't do their job. Well, how do we know that? So I was first told, oh, you can't get the open case numbers because that is not disclosable under FOI. And I said to Jason Cohen, who was the Director of Operations of Complaints over at DCP, I said, I'm just looking for the case numbers. I'm not looking for any information about it. He conceded. He said, okay, open case numbers,
Your
FOI.
3 minutes is up. Please summarize.
So anyway, I tried to do my own.
One second, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Representative Wood has a question.
Okay.
Sorry, Attorney Bard, can you share with us your summary of the FOI, the line of thought that you were on, please?
Yes. So there are a number of different complaints you can make to DCP. You can make them about, apartment managers, property managers, mobile homes. There's like 8 different categories. And what it appeared to me when I was doing this process was the case numbers aren't classified as any particular kind of complaint. So you're asking for complaint numbers, and then Jason Cohen said, well, open case numbers are disclosable. So then I started trying to get all of them for all the different categories to try to piece it together, and the portal says they're not disclosable. So I just got caught in a mess there, and I only have so much time. And so I have not been able to get information that's clear about exactly what the workload is over at Department of Consumer Protection. And I think that's important for us to know to begin to attack this problem. But right now, the problem is it's been over a year. DCP is just at the beginning of perhaps a public hearing come. Meanwhile, this property manager, who's no longer at Westage, has moved on. And, people at Westage say, oh, the past is the past. Leave it behind. Let's just move forward. Let's not be vindictive. It's not about that. It's about preventing someone from going to other communities and doing the same thing over and over again. And unit owners need to be empowered to address this when the board does not address it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Representative Wood.
Thank you, Attorney Baird. I wanted to let you know that we did receive a ton of support for this online. We are getting emails often, people who are just finding out about it. I think there's a little social media effort going on, because not everyone follows what we're doing up here at the legislature. I had a coffee hour this morning, and I had people come saying that they heard we were doing this bill and express their support. So, last year we worked with, I think, all of the entities that would be impacted by this, and we came to a bill that was fully negotiated and ready to move forward. For timing or whatever reasons it didn't. And, we do feel that this bill has gone through the process, has had a ton of feedback, and is really just waiting, to be heard at this point and make it for a vote on the House floor. So we really hope to work with you and your team to get it to that point. And I just want to say thank you for all the research that you're doing. You really did provide value to us and educate us a lot on what's going on in this space. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? I see you. Representative Pat D'Amato.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Rachel, I know you had mentioned there was a summary judgment case that was, I think, denied by the HOA had filed a summary judgment. Does that have anything to do with this case, or was that a different type of lawsuit?
That was a different case. I was tracking. I do track cases that involve foreclosure activity, where it seems like the same set of law firms works with condo associations to foreclose on people, and sometimes they pursue strict foreclosure instead of foreclosure by sale, which anybody that knows about foreclosures knows that is, if it's not a foreclosure by sale, strict foreclosure is a draconian remedy. And in that case that I communicated to you, that was one of those kind of cases, but that's a whole separate issue. I have so many issues that I could address, but we have to start somewhere, and I think this bill is a perfect place to start.
Okay. And I don't know, my understanding of strict versus sale was just whether there was a matter of equity, but I guess we can discuss that another day. And I know, like you said, we're only addressing this one minor issue. I have to say, I think in defending some HOA owner lawsuits, I really found that there basically is no path for a homeowner or condo owner to, let's say, with some pretty, major neglect. I'll say if it doesn't have to do with water or something, or, their roof flies off, yeah, they can sue if they still have to pay over that. But anything a little bit less than that, I don't know. If I'm paying an HOA fee every month, I expect to get services. And if I'm not getting services, well, why am I paying that HOA fee? I get that insurance, there's still insurance, but when a specific unit is intentionally or not intentionally being left out, but still not getting the service, and then there's no avenue for that, I think we really do have to look at our HOA laws, what we have in Connecticut, and do a deep dive and really look at some of the other issues that are happening around the state, especially with, as many people assert, we have a housing crisis. Well, why would we want to contribute and add to that? I don't understand. You had mentioned that there's some law firms that are that could have some issues. Are there any type of conflicts of interest that you've seen between some of these law firms and the lawsuits that they are filing on behalf of HOAs across the state?
I did go into that somewhat in my written testimony, and there is a professional organization in Connecticut that includes property managers, law firms, et cetera. And although there's nothing wrong with that, when different professions work together closely, when different individuals involved in a profession work together closely, there tends to be camaraderie. They serve on boards, and I think most board of directors of common interest communities are not really aware of this. And there's a certain camaraderie. I'm a property manager. That attorney's a good attorney. I know that person from this professional organization. The attorney, oh, that property manager is a good property manager. I know that property manager from this association. And, I think the most egregious example that I put in my written testimony was that there was a lawyer representing an association that was personally representing the property manager during negotiations about how much the property owner should settle to pay for the overcharges. Clearly a conflict which nobody knew about, only somebody that would just spend, hours upon hours researching things would know about. And I think that's another reason why unit owners, especially when it comes to financial issues, I mean, everybody knows HOAs, people complain about everything. But when it comes to financial issues, unit owners need to be empowered to say, okay, this needs to stop, board. You've been taken in, you're not paying attention. You're kind of close with these people because you're all working together. Okay, we see this and we need to bring it to somebody's attention.
I think last year when this bill was going through, there were some, I guess, some attorneys who had said that there is a way to get this information, and I don't know if that's through discovery. Does this discovery process not allow? Well, I guess the lawsuit you had said that an individual owner can't bring this at all, right? So there is no other avenue for through discovery or otherwise to get this information?
Right, just to encapsulate it, if you are a unit owner in an HOA and you have an issue particular to yourself, like my roof blew off, then you have standing to do something about it in court.
Uh-huh.
But if you are a unit owner in a condominium community and your problem is the same as everybody else's, in other words, the property manager's not doing what he or she should do, there's financial issues, but your problem's the same as everybody else's. Well, the board represents the association, so you cannot go to court representing everybody, because that's what the board does. And so when you ask your board for financial records, which, under state statute, you have a right to do, and the board doesn't give them to you because they don't have them, because the property manager didn't give it to them, or because, God forbid, there are no financial records because people are just like texting everything so that there's no record to track for things that go wrong, then if the records don't exist and the board, for whatever reason, isn't making the property manager make them exist, then the board has no records to give you. And if the association attorney, for whatever reason, is not saying to the board, you have to make the property manager make these records exist, then unit owners are just left. I mean, people know about financial crimes. I mean, records are kept, they're shredded, they're two books, there's two set of books. There's a million things that can go on with records, and if unit owners are requesting records and they're not getting them, that's your first red flag right there, and that does absolutely happen. I want to say there's somebody else on this list who is going to be talking, I think, after Ed Peruta, and Mr. Kugler, I have the utmost respect for him. He's from Imagineers, and Imagineers represented Westage for maybe 30 years. And at the end of their representation of Westage, I asked Mr. Kugler for records, and he gave me a zip drive of thousands of records. So it can be done. Property managers, it can be done. But it's the ones that fly by the seat of their pants and avoid scrutiny, avoid transparency. Those are the ones we're after. Imagineers, I have the utmost respect for them, and Mr. Kugler, I've dealt with him before.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Thank you very much for testifying today. Up next is Diane Smith. Good morning. Welcome.
I'm here to speak in favor of House Bill 5264. This bill would expand the current Desmond's Law, which currently only includes dogs and cats. I'm an active member of Desmond's Army, and we monitor all the animal abuse cases throughout the state. I usually personally go to at least one or two of these cases every week. So I have seen and heard hundreds of horrific cases involving animal abuse. But there's one in particular that occurred about 5 years ago, and I can't get this out of my mind even to this day, to the point where sometimes I'll wake up in the middle of the night and it comes to mind and I have trouble falling back to sleep. But it involved a bunny rabbit. This man went into a local pet store, purchased a bunny for $75 and started driving home. Well, his car was swerving all over the road, and a police officer saw it, so thinking he was under the influence, pulled him over. Well, what he witnessed was horrific. There was blood, there was white fur and blood all over the seat because this man was dismembering the bunny, cutting off its legs, its tail, and it was suffering there. This case went on for 4 years with 40 court appearances, and Desmond's Army was there for almost all of those 40 cases. And the only thing we kept thinking about is during that time, this guy could have been doing the same thing to other innocent animals. So if an advocate, I believe, was involved in this case, it could have been expedited in a much more timely and just manner. So I'm imploring this committee and the legislature to add all companion animals to the existing Desmond's Law and pass House Bill 5264 so other innocent animals don't have to endure the type of pain and torture that this little bunny rabbit endured.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there any questions? Representative Wood.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you for your advocacy. Thanks for everything that you and members of Desmond's Army are doing every day. I don't think many of us realize that you are the silent advocates sitting in courtrooms on a daily basis on behalf of those without a voice. I think that we had a 4.5-hour public hearing, the Animal Caucus, at the beginning of session, and we heard a lot of really just hundreds of reasons why we should be supporting the expansion of Desmond's Law. One of the things that stuck with me was the tying of animal abuse to elder abuse and child abuse and domestic violence and other things. And animals really are our first line of defense when addressing behaviors like this. So having laws in place that respond to that and have kind of a zero tolerance policy will really help us long-term with our other issues in households that we are also dealing with. I wanted to let you know, I don't know if you checked the website today, but we have hundreds and hundreds of testimony in support of this bill. I've only saw letters of support. So thank you for spreading the word and sharing that with those out there. But you are sitting amongst hundreds, if not thousands of people that are advocating for this law to be expanded. So thank you.
Thank you, but one thing people need to remember is that even if you don't care about animals that much, it's part of a cycle of violence. It starts with animal abuse, goes to child abuse, domestic violence. We witness combination charges at the cases that we go to that include those other crimes as well.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Diane, if you don't mind, if you can just state your full name for the record.
Diane Smith.
Thank you so much.
Seeing no other questions, thank you very much, Ms. Smith, for coming today.
Thank you.
Up next is Vince Scarfo.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chair, Co-Chair, Ranking Members, and the members of the Insurance and Real Estate Committee. My name is Vince Scarfo, and I'm the Director of Advocacy and Government Affairs for the Restoration Industry Association. The Restoration Industry Association is the leading international trade association representing professional water, fire, mold, and disaster restoration contractors, advocating for industry standards, ethical practices, and legislative and regulatory policies that protect property owners and elevate the restoration profession. 2026 marks our 80th year as a trade association and our first year with a Director of Government Affairs. Like our colleagues, I'd like to offer our strong support for House Bill 5263. We also want to sincerely thank the committee leadership, the elected officials, and all the stakeholders we worked so closely with last year to reach the agreed upon amendments. That is why we respectfully urge the committee to amend sections 1 through 8 of the bill to reflect the agreed upon amendments reached by the parties last session. The RIA strongly supports the bill as a vital consumer protection measure. However, to truly protect property owners, it is critical that water, fire, and emergency services restorers are recognized with our own distinct trade identification within the state of Connecticut. We are nothing like tree trimmers. We are not general contractors performing elective remodeling. When a pipe bursts in your home or a house catches on fire, time is of the essence. RIA members are highly trained, technical experts performing immediate life and property saving mitigation. The distinct difference is why RIA is aggressively pursuing through the Office of Management and Budget in Washington, D.C., our own unique North American industry classification system code specific for our trade. Lumping highly technical emergency mitigation experts into the same regulatory bucket as standard home improvement contractors inevitably subjects time-sensitive disaster response to rules meant for elective construction. Our push for a specific trade identification in Connecticut aligns with our work on the national stage. We worked hand in hand last year with the Coalition Against Insurance Fraud, the National Insurance Crime Bureau, and the National Council of Insurance Legislators on the Storm Chaser Model Act, which firmly established that consumer protection law must never be implemented in a manner that impedes the immediate performance of emergency services necessary to stop ongoing damage. Furthermore, our members operate under a strict code of ethics, ensuring they are accountable, transparent, and focused solely on stabilizing properties in accordance to objectives and technical standards. That is why we strongly support the agreed upon amendments developed last year, specifically the language found in section 501 and 502. These sections correctly define emergency restoration services as water extraction, fire cleanup, and mold containment, expressly distinct from structural rebuild or roof repair. Most importantly, these lines allow homeowners facing a bona fide emergency to provide a handwritten waiver bypassing the standard cancellation period. This ensures rapid stabilization can begin instantly, preventing secondary damage such as hazardous mold growth. Similarly, lines 117 through 132 rightly define an urgent or emergency circumstance as any situation where a loss, if not addressed immediately, will result in additional damage. As we support this bill, we urge the committee to ensure that the $3,000 cap mentioned in the lines is modernized so that ethical contractors are not forced to halt this critical, time-sensitive stabilization work
Your 3 minutes
mid-project.
are up. Please summarize.
I'm done. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you. Any questions? Representative Wood.
Thank you, Vince. And we do want to apologize. We kind of rushed to draft this year, and we did forget about the negotiated language, not intentionally, just because we were rushing to get that done. So that is noted, and we will make sure that your comments and your suggested changes are included in the next version. So I just want to say thank you for that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, sir, for coming today.
Thank you for having me.
Anytime. Up next is Karen Williams.
Unfortunately, Karen couldn't make it today.
Okay. Moving on to Eric George.
Senator Cabrera, Representative Wood, members of the Insurance and Real Estate Committee, thank you for allowing me to testify before you today. My name is Eric George, and I'm the president of the Insurance Association of Connecticut, here to offer comments on 2 bills, House Bill 5262 and House Bill 5263. The first, 5262, would create a true opt-out e-posting system to allow insurers to post certain insurance policies endorsements on the internet through their websites. You did great work in this area last year via Public Act 25-87, but that did not establish a true opt-out system, and the paper delivery remains the fundamental system in Connecticut. We think that it is high time that we allow our insurers to pass along cost savings that would be inherent to having an opt-out system. We think that certain changes do need to be made to the bill, and they are included in my testimony. Specifically, we would strongly suggest highlighting that both dental insurance and vision insurance are included. You also have my testimony in terms of the reasons why going paperless is the right way to go. So we really appreciate everything that you've done here and just request that minor modification. Also, within the same bill, there is an unrelated piece that I want to offer comment on. It's Section 9 of the bill 5262. And what it would do is direct the Department of Insurance to assess the NCOIL Model Act on motor vehicle, the NCOIL Motor Vehicle Glass Model Act, pardon me. We think that this issue has been reviewed sufficiently, and we would encourage this committee to actually put in place the full Model Act from NCOIL. And if we can provide that language to you, I know others, but after me will be speaking on this as well. We think that this goes a long way to protect consumers from fraud, improve transparency, and strengthen our existing system. So thank you very much. On to House Bill 5263. This is the Assignment of Benefits Bill, and this is a critical step towards protecting homeowners from the predatory practices of certain, and I want to stress certain, home improvement contractors that exploit homeowners by having them sign assignment of benefits contracts. I want to align my comments with the previous speaker. I thought he did a great job. We thank you, Representative Wood, for acknowledging that we actually went a long way last year in reaching accommodations with all interested stakeholders, and we fully support going back to those agreed upon amendments. In the testimony that we have filed, you will see that we have an identification to the LCO that should contain all of those agreed upon amendments. We think that it is important that that certain homeowners contractors do not operate as unlicensed insurance adjusters, which currently happens in some cases. And we think that House Bill 5263 goes a long way to protecting homeowners and policyholders. I am happy to answer any questions, and I really appreciate the time.
Thank you, thank you very much. Representative Wood.
Thank you. Thank you, Eric. I was just wondering on the NCOIL Model Act, can you provide us that information?
Absolutely. We can get you. I will email the committee the NCOIL Model Act.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. George? Online, seeing none? I don't think so. I think we're good. Thank you very much, Eric.
Thank you.
Up next is Mr. Edward Peruta. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. I am in favor of House Bill 5265 regarding condominiums. And obviously you've heard from Attorney Rachel Baird, who represented me in various attempts to straighten out some financial issues in the Westage condominiums. In Rocky Hill, I'm going to tell you a story. Won't take long. I asked for financial records. Our bylaws and whatever says that an owner or their representative can have access to financial records to just see what's going on. Dan Zach from Metro Property Management refused me access to the records because I became the treasurer and I asked the question, how come this bill for $430 to put weather stripping around a door? What did the material cost? You know, time, material, and tax on an invoice. He didn't know how much time went into it. He didn't keep records of the time people did. I guess he did it in his head. Well, I sued to try and obtain records that I or my forensic accountant could review. And it got thrown out of court because I couldn't do it myself. And I record meetings. They didn't want me to, but I did. I recorded meetings, and I have Dan Zach 4 or 5 times informing the board that the contract was never signed. He never signed it. There is no contract. He said it on tape. The president said it on tape. So he tried to make a claim to our insurance company for $52,000 in attorney's fees defending against giving me the records. And I talked to him and I said, Dan, I have a problem. If you've said repeatedly that there is no contract, where do you get the authority to seek $52,000 in a contract that you never signed? All of a sudden, a contract appeared. And I know how it happened, but I'm telling you, sitting here, because I realize insurance is part of this too. That's insurance fraud. He was able to put together some pages that made it appear that there was a contract. The president's on record as saying, I never signed a contract with that amount of money on it. And every case that I brought, I lost. And the insurance rates for Westage goes up $200,000, an extra $200,000 because I'm suing. When in fact, by law, I should be able to just, let me have the records. If 20% of the community, and I'm the president but now, I proxied the board to go bye-bye. There's a new board, we've had no issues. We've tried to follow the rules. But I have to sit here and say, if 20% of the owners,
Your 3
decide-
minutes is up. Please summarize.
I'll summarize.
Thank you.
If 20% of the people want to conduct an audit, the bill wants us to pay for it. I don't mind paying up front for it, but if we find that there's wrongdoing, that money should be returned to us. I think there's something called the Special Attorney General, that if the Attorney General doesn't do it and a private citizen does it, they can make an application to be paid as if they were Attorney General. Same thing should apply. I don't mind the bill as it sits, but there should be a little provision that says if wrongdoing is found, then the 20% who put the money in get their money back. I love what you're doing. I love the fact that it came so close last year. I'm begging you. There's a lot of people who own condominiums who don't know how to do what needs to be done. Please, I've summarized, I'm done.
Thank you.
And I thank you very much.
Hang on 1 second, make sure there's any questions for you or comments.
I'll just ask a quick question.
Representative Wood.
Thank you, Chairman. So, Ed, nice to see you. So basically, if we do allow you to do the audit, and basically the audit says, well, there's no records. I mean, that's saying something. That's saying they didn't properly keep the records. They're supposed to be keeping the records. I mean, I feel like that exposes a lot in and of itself, because some people are like, well, what happens if, you can't find anything? Well, they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing in terms of managing a property, correct?
Absolutely correct, and I'll give you an example of that. I am not happy with the Department of Consumer Protection's handling of our complaint, because we gave them the audio records, we gave them the paper records, we gave them everything that substantiates what we were saying. And one management company is supposed to turn all of the records over to the new management company. No correspondence, because Dan Zak does everything in text messages, and he doesn't keep them. But he's supposed to, all complaints, all communications from owners are supposed to be given to the board so the board can see what people are complaining about. He didn't do it. Rachel went through the course and became a certified CAM. I sat there and watched it on TV as she went through, and I said, he doesn't do any of this. It's a smoke and mirrors show. Get a license, don't comply with what you're supposed to do. Listen, I'm sorry.
You're good.
Okay.
No,
Thank
we
you very much.
understand. We understand. We're trying to give you guys some more tools with this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming. Up next is Carl Kugler. I think is remote.
Everybody, good morning, Senator Cabrera and Representative Wood and the members of the committee. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you today. In my professional role, I'm the Director of Community Association Management for Imagineers. I'm in my 35th year as a Community Association Manager. Imagineers has been managing communities now for 45 years. In general, I'm supportive of the bill to 5265 Act concerning the common interest communities and changes to the Common Interest Ownership Act. I do have one key concern, which is in Section 3, which is placing a cap on the maximum amount that could be charged for lender questionnaires. And the concern is Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and FHA, ever since the tragic loss of 98 lives down in Surfside, Florida, have really ramped up their review of lender questionnaires and information when buyers are trying to purchase in a common interest community, in a condominium especially. And this has added a lot of time and expense to our operations in terms of providing this information. I had some people in our disclosure department provide me with some of the information that they're providing. Some of these questionnaires, one in particular, was 11 pages long. And if it was all fixed type of questions, it would be easy enough. But several or more than several of the questions are things that have to be updated at the time of a particular sale because they're fluid things that change over time. One of the other concerns is when we do provide the questionnaire, there are far more questions that are raised and asked that provide for, questions of, can you provide us with copies of minutes? When they go through the minutes, they may see a homeowner mention that they had a roof leak, a unit totally unrelated to the unit that the lender is trying to secure a mortgage for. And what ends up happening is our staff is asked to go prove that that roof leak that was mentioned by a homeowner was dealt with. The big concern that they have, the Surfside tragedy was caused by deferred maintenance. So there's a real emphasis, and I don't disagree that there should be an emphasis on deferred maintenance, making sure that associations are disclosing what's pending, what's happening in their community. It's just, it comes with a cost. Part of the process in this day and age with technology is an expectation that you don't pick up the phone any longer or mail a check-in, that it's done online, that it's not only requested online, paid for online, but also the information is sent electronically. The ability to create these platforms or subscribe to these platforms come with a cost. And all we're looking to do is simply be able to be, covered, have our cost of doing that covered. One of the things that gets forgotten, I think, is the fact that the producer of these questionnaires, the person answering it or the company answering it, we take on liability. We take very seriously
Sir,
the
your 3
accuracy
minutes
of.
is up. Please summarize.
We take very seriously the accuracy, but there is some risk and exposure that we have as a company for providing that information. So I thank you again for the opportunity, and I'm available should any questions come up now or in the future.
Thank you very much. Any questions, Representative Wood?
Thank you, Carl. So we got a bunch of emails over the summer and into the session regarding these fees being all over the place and varying differently and being extremely high. We don't want to cap anybody. We want to make sure people are paid for the work that they're doing. How do you suggest something like this?
I guess we could have additional conversations. I know I could pool people in our industry to try to get an idea of what the different rates are and be able to provide some detail of what's driving those particular costs so there can be a fair understanding. One of the other concerns I have is, there is a set rate for resale certificates, but the resale certificates, what needs to be included in that is dictated by the state, by statute. So it's a known quantity of information. It's a set bit of information that has to be provided. We have no control over what Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, or FHA changes their requirements to, or the additional questions that come out of that. So that's part of the concern, is how do you control that? How do you have a crystal ball to know what's going to come down the road? 5 years ago, we never had an idea of that. One of the other concerns is when the laws regarding the resale packages were amended a couple sessions back, there was at least some type of a mechanism to increase that amount over time without having to go for a change in legislation, because the rates prior to that had been in place for, I think, 15 or 20 years, and obviously costs change over time.
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying, and we don't want to pass something. I mean, I hate to even put numbers like that into statute because of just the way things change and inflation and all these other factors that go into it. So let's keep talking. Like maybe if there's even like a yearly posting to DCP by the industry of a range of what this should be. I just want to make sure that those that were being charged like $1,500 and then, kind of in that range, we just make sure there's not excessive fees being passed on to people.
Yeah, and we want to be fair. I think part of the concern is that if management companies, if it drops to as low as $100, which, we're talking, 20 years ago rates, what's inevitably going to happen is management companies can't absorb that expense. They're going to need to pass that on to the association. So in essence, what's going to happen is every homeowner is going to incur that cost, even if they never have need to get a questionnaire. So that's a concern that I think that would treat the other homeowners unfairly, and we wouldn't want to see that happen either.
Thank you very much. No other questions, comments? Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
As a friendly reminder, when you come up, if you could just please, in the beginning, state your name and who you're with for the record. Up next is Brooke Foley.
Eric George spoke for Brooke Foley.
Oh, okay. That's that. Everett Hines.
So it looks like we have Everett Hines
Okay.
on Zoom, but Everett, if you can hear me, please accept the promotion to a panelist. That is the only way that you will be able to speak. I'm not sure if we're having technical difficulties,
Okay.
but we can,
You can come back to him if he does.
yeah.
Tom Tucker.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Good morning.
All right, my name is Tom Tucker. I am Vice President of Legislative Affairs at Safe Light Auto Glass. Good morning, Chair Cabrero and Wood, ranking members Huang and Pavlik D'Amato, and distinguished members of the committee. We testified today in support of the In-Coil Motor Vehicle Glass Act that Section 9 of House Bill 5262 requires the insurance commissioner to study. The purpose of our testimony is twofold. One, the Motor Vehicle Glass Act is a framework of best practices that have been vetted by In-Coil, by legislators from across the country, and it does 6 simple things that really should not be debatable as far as best practices and good governance. It does the first thing it does is the ban on the assignment of benefits. Insurers cannot transfer their property rights or benefits to repair shops. This is a trend that's happening all across the country. It leads to fraudulent practices. I believe Connecticut is looking at the same thing, but this is the first provision in the Glass Act. It also has transparency requirements. Shops must provide good faith estimates and itemized invoices. Again, a best practice if we're keeping our eye on the consumer. The consumer should know what they're paying for, what they're being charged for. It also prohibits the gifts, incentives, or any inducements tied to insurance claims. We believe if you can allow someone to give a gift or incentive for an insurance claim, you're actually doing reverse steering. And if steering is against the law, then we should tighten this loophole up so that you prevent this reverse steering. ADAS systems, most modern vehicles have advanced driver assist systems, and they need to be calibrated after a repair. The act provides mandatory notification to the consumer if they have ADAS. If the shop intends to recalibrate, the recalibration must be in conformance with the OEM specifications. You have to give a notice if the recalibration is unsuccessful. The shop must give a notice that not to rely on your safety systems and to go to the dealership or a qualified repair specialist. And an itemized invoice at the end, again, so that you can see you haven't been charged for something. Again, this is a best practice. There's some consumer choice protections in it also. You cannot start a repair until after a claim number is filed and a referral number is provided. This provision is simply to ensure that everyone's in alignment, from the insurer to the repairer to the consumer, what's being done, how much is being charged, and who's responsible. There are prohibited practices, no inflated or non-customary fees or deceptive or fraudulent acts. And finally, penalties and documentation. Again, it has to have an itemized invoice throughout the process, and there are penalties if you violate it. We think that the committee should amend 5262 and move forward with the Motor Vehicle Glass Act. We are wholly supportive and be more than happy to answer any questions that the committee has, but we feel this is a common sense piece of legislation. It's good public policy, and at the end of the day, we're all talking about the same people. Your constituents, our customers, and the insurers' policyholders for a good practice and good governance. And with that, we'd be more than happy to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Thank you very much for testifying today. Representative Wood.
Thank you, Tom. I was wondering if you could share with us how many other states have adopted the In-Coil Model Glass Act.
Absolutely. Great question. Florida, Iowa, Kentucky, New York, Utah has a version, and Maryland has a version also. There are 7 proposals pending this year. Virginia's on the verge of passing it probably within the next week, but has been introduced in Washington State, California, Louisiana, and North Carolina and Virginia this year.
Very impressive that you had that off the top of your head. Thank you for that. And NCOIL is a National Conference of Insurance Legislators that
Yes.
meet 4 times a year.
Yes.
When was the NCOIL Model Act adopted, and who participated? If you could just share with those
Sure.
of us that are listening, who works on putting the Model Acts forward, and who's at the table?
Sure. The NCOIL, as you said, NCOIL meets 4 times a year. This particular bill was held over, so it was heard 5 times because there was significant debate on this bill. The people at the table were the insurers, the glass industry, the Insurance Fraud Association, the vehicle manufacturers, and there were all the components, the Insurance Fraud Association, consumer advocates. And so this bill was debated for about 15 months before NCOIL adopted it in April of last year.
And can you just, when you say the glass industry, can you tell me who's part of the glass industry that was at the table?
Sure, Safelite was there. There were some other players who are in the collision space. I don't know, I don't recall the names of the companies, but there were quite a few entities who perform glassware at the table.
Great. Thank you very much for your testimony, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Wood. Any other questions, comments? Nope. Thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you much.
Up next is Joshua Levin.
Good morning.
Good morning, Joshua.
I apologize for not being there in person. I'm just a little under the weather, but I do appreciate this opportunity to submit testimony today. So good morning, esteemed members of the Insurance and Real Estate Committee. My name is Joshua Levin, Legislative and Advocacy Manager for Connecticut Votes for Animals. On behalf of CVA, I would like to express my strong support for all aspects of House Bill 5264. My testimony, though, is going to focus primarily on Desmond's Law expansion. So currently, Desmond's Law only allows advocates to be appointed in cases regarding cats or dogs. But animal abusers don't just victimize cats and dogs. So the law shouldn't stop at just cats and dogs. Since 2016, when Desmond's Law was passed, 40% of all animal cruelty cases have involved animals other than cats and dogs. This includes rabbits, hamsters, reptiles, horses, turtles, and more. Data gathered during this time by Desmond's Army indicates that cases with an appointed advocate are more likely to result in meaningful outcomes that hold defendants accountable for their actions and protect vulnerable populations from continued abuse. Advocates do more than just represent the animal. They tell the story of what happened prior to, during, and after the abuse. They explain the defendant's pattern of behavior and highlight the human connection that's inherent in all animal cruelty cases. This is crucial because animal cruelty is not an isolated crime, and cases must be monitored to identify criminal behavior patterns to prevent future violence. The link between violence to people and violence to animals has been well established for decades. Research shows that animal abuse serves as a better predictor of sexual assault than previous homicide, arson, or firearm convictions. Further, 63% of aggressive criminals reported deliberately causing harm to animals during their childhood, and 71% of people who have dealt with intimate partner violence have reported that their partner previously harmed, killed, or threatened their pets. These statistics are more important now than ever because Connecticut is currently facing a dual crisis: an increase in animal cruelty crimes and a decrease in legal accountability for offenders. From 2023 to 24, animal cruelty crimes increased by 37%. From 24 to 25, it's estimated that animal cruelty crimes once again rose by around 18%. Meanwhile, in 2024, 93% of disposed animal cruelty cases resulted in little to no meaningful consequences, and in 2025, 80%. Animal cruelty is a warning sign for future violence, and if we don't treat it with the severity that it necessitates, we risk allowing continued harm, not only to animals, but to people as well. The expansion of Desmond's Law to allow court-appointed advocates to represent all companion animals in animal cruelty cases is a critical step forwards, as it allows advocates to speak in the best interest of not only the animal, but frankly, society as a whole. I respectfully encourage strengthening Desmond's Law expansion by permitting an appeal process should a judge deny an advocate appointment request. Thank you. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Representative Wood.
Thank you very much for joining us today. Thanks for your advocacy when it comes to protecting animals, all animals. I know you're working in the Environment Committee as well, too. I was just really startled with your numbers on the increase in animal cruelty cases. Can you just share with us what is happening in the courts with these cases? Are people, you know, told they can't purchase animals or have animals again? What are some things that you're seeing?
So the primary concern that we have with the increase in animal cruelty crimes and decrease in accountability is the use of accelerated rehabilitation, primarily. A lot of diversion programs, but primarily AR. And so we think that AR serves an important function in preventing unnecessary incarceration, but that should be for minor nonviolent offenses. When it comes to animal cruelty, it involves intentional or criminally negligent harm to a vulnerable living being. And so this proposal here just would ensure that violent crimes against animals, which made up 92% of all felony cases since 2016, are met with sentencing that is appropriate to the severity of the crime. What's going on right now is they're being diverted, and once they go through that diversion process, this record or this charge is wiped from their criminal record, and then the animal cruelty laws that were passed in 2023, like the mandatory 5-year minimum ban from owning or working with animals, won't come into play because that's not on their record. So the use of these diversion programs undermines current law.
Yeah, that is really important, I think, for everyone to hear, is that a part of this bill puts together a working group to dive into the usage of AR to explore an animal abuse registry, which other states have decided to move forward on, so that there's not just a slap on the wrist and a continuation of this behavior, that we're really tracking this type of behavior and putting an end to it. So again, thank you so much for your testimony. We appreciate your advocacy.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you. Take care.
Up next is John Wisniewski. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Good morning.
Do I have to press a button?
Yep, the button's pressed. The floor is yours.
Okay, so
You're
I
on.
came here to oppose the study of the auto glass section of HB 5262 because it omitted, which I feel is jurisdictional problem. The auto glass industry for the last 26 years has been licensed, investigated, and by the Department of Consumer Protection and their Auto and Flat Glass Board. I'm on that board, but I'm not speaking as them. I actually found out about this law yesterday and did talk to DCP yesterday. They didn't even know. So I would ask formally that you guys at least get an opinion, because they're licensing body for auto glass. Unlike, there's only a handful in the country. Also, you have not only my opposition to what was a study not including DCP, but now they're just trying to fast track into, hey, let's make this a law. Not only my testimony is opposed against that and now, but you also have the Connecticut Glass Dealers Association's testimony saying they didn't want to study. I can't speak for them, but I think this is going a little too fast. And I also think that there's some licensed glass individual companies that have also said, hey, why isn't this going through DCP as a jurisdictional issue? Also, I verbally got that the National Auto Glass Safety Council, at least verbally, told me they're going to be submitting something against a study without DCP, but now they don't even want to study. Jurisdiction is a problem here with creating this law. Number two, the biggest thing that we really like a lot apart, I personally like a lot apart, and the board has actually spoken about the calibration aspect of it. But NCOIL specifically states that they are, their model will include the inspection, repair, and replacement of auto glass and ADAS. That should be under Department of Consumer Protection. And if there's fraud happening, like they're saying, I think that you should request to see how much fraud has been reported to that entity, because at every single meeting, we meet 4 times a year, we get reports of people, of complaints, and, you know, they tell us what happened. They can fine, suspend, or even revoke your license. Number 2, Safelite is the largest TPA on earth. They answer the phones for every single solitary company. They're asking you to essentially make into a law that they can withhold another glass company's payment if they didn't call and get a claim number first. We just had a storm outside. Sometimes, my opinion is, if a glass company wants to trust somebody, do the job, and then get the claim number after or while they're doing the job, great, they can do that. If not, usually they have an authorization. They can go through the proper channels of small claims court or
Sir,
something
your
else.
3 minutes is up. Please summarize. If you can also state your full name for the record.
Sure, John Wisniewski. The last thing is gift cards. It's already on the section, General Statute number 38A-825 is a law. So it's not, you don't need to create a law. You need to enforce the law that's already on the books.
Thank you. Representative Wood.
Thanks, John. Were your members or any of the associations that you're affiliated with involved in the NCOIL Model Act?
I love that question that you asked, and no. And also, that's why I think the Connecticut Glass Dealers Association, I'm assuming that the Department of Consumer Protection would like a seat at the table, because I noticed that the Safelite, the question that you asked for the other individual, he couldn't name another glass company. And so I think that's an issue. And I think now that we have a governing body here, they should be included in this.
And just for clarification, I don't know where this comment of not having DCP, all of our committee, we work with DCP on everything. So they could have come and testified, and but I don't see them on the list. I'll see if they've submitted testimony, but
Yes.
they are absolutely, this is a public hearing. So they, like, every comment is welcomed and a part of this. And as you heard from a lot of the testimony, we're going to be making tweaks to things that, were wrong and stuff like that. And DCP absolutely has a seat at the table.
Well, and let me clarify that. This came out like Monday, that we saw that somehow auto glass came into this bill. And I was the one that, I was actually talking to DCP yesterday, somebody at DCP, and they said to me, wow, thank you for flagging this. I'm surprised it got by us. And that was yesterday. So I'm not saying they were denied, but it was a snowstorm, and I was the one that was like, hey, do you know there's an auto glass bill in play? But at that time, it was just a study. Now they want you to go full-fledged bill. They want you to full-fledged adopt NCOIL, and we're already licensed by the state of Connecticut. We have been since 2020. So I'm not saying that you kept them out. I think they didn't know.
Thank you. Just so, it's a process, as you, I'm sure, are aware, and this is why we have these hearings, so we can continue conversations. So I know we'll continue these conversations with DCP or anyone else. Representative, go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, John, for being here. In your testimony, you say that this act would hurt small independent shops. Can you expand on that, please?
Sure, I think part of it would, and that is the denying of a claim number. They say that, I don't have it in front of me, but the NCOIL basically is stating that if you have an insured that comes in, wants a job, wants to get the job done, and doesn't get insurance, or doesn't get a claim number prior to, what happens is they won't get paid. But what also happens with glass claims is, and this is my opinion, we're all registered and licensed by the state of Connecticut, every one of us. I am a preferred provider with the Safe Flight Network. They answer the phones for State Farm, Geico, Progressive, Liberty Mutual, Amica, et cetera, et cetera. And what we're finding now more and more is they'll say, well, you got to take pictures of this claim before we can release a referral number, which is not a problem. But then we've also heard that they'll say, unless you choose Safe Flight, you won't have to do that. So we find it kind of to be unfair, and because we're licensed, if we're committing fraud, shouldn't it be reported to the Department of Consumer Protection and investigated? And that's anybody. I mean, they're saying that there's fraud. I don't know how rampant it is, but again, ask the Department of Consumer Protection how and who is, and ask them to investigate it. But I think that going back to your question is, they hold up claims. I don't know if it's intentional. I can't speak for it. But we have heard from customers' feedback, I'd have to submit a bunch of pictures to use you, but if I use them, they can do it tomorrow.
Thank you, Representative. Any other questions? Nope, seeing none. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Up next is Kate Nico? I think I'm pronouncing that right. Online.
Yes, good morning.
Good
Kate
morning.
Nickel. Good morning. Kate Nickel, licensed clinical social worker, founder emeritus of Soul Friends Incorporated, and an adjunct professor of social work at Quinnipiac. Good morning, chairpersons and members of the committee. I write in support of HB 5264 and respectfully urge its passage with the critical inclusion of a qualified mental health expert on the proposed animal abuse task force. For 4 decades, I have treated children, adolescents, and adults impacted by animal abuse, both as perpetrators and witnesses. Animal cruelty is not an isolated behavioral issue. It is a clinically established sentinel indicator of interpersonal violence, impulsivity, lack of empathy, and intergenerational trauma. Research consistently demonstrates the link. And when we fail to address the psychological drivers of animal cruelty, we miss an opportunity to interrupt and break cycles of violence. HB 5264 wisely includes all companion animals and establishes an animal abuse task force. However, a task force without clinical trauma expertise will not provide a just or humane assessment of the problem. Animal abuse is fundamentally a mental health and public safety issue. Without trauma-informed assessment and evidence-based intervention, policy responses risk being only punitive rather than preventative and protective of animal welfare. Connecticut has nationally recognized expertise in this field. Through Soul Friends and in collaboration with the University of Tennessee Veterinary Social Work Program and Dr. Ken Shapiro of Animals and Society, we are completing the BARC program, a structured, accountability-based mental health curriculum for individuals who have harmed animals. BARC integrates best practices from veterinary social work, trauma-informed care, cognitive behavioral accountability models, and restorative justice frameworks. It does not excuse behavior. It is not a slap on the wrist. It holds offenders accountable while addressing the underlying trauma, attachment disruption, and emotional dysregulation that often drives cruelty. When animal abuse is clinically evaluated in treatment, we reduce downstream costs in child welfare, domestic violence services, law enforcement, incarceration, and emergency medical care. And from an insurance and fiscal standpoint, prevention and early intervention are far less costly than crisis response. Connecticut has the opportunity to lead the nation by aligning animal welfare legislation with behavioral health expertise. All animals deserve protection under the law. Without mental health integration in the task force, we risk addressing symptoms rather than root causes. I respectfully request that HB 5264 explicitly require the inclusion of Connecticut-based mental health experts and animal abuse and trauma on the Animal Abuse Task Force and that insurance considerations recognize the cost savings associated with a proper mental health assessment and treatment of offenders. This is not only a humane policy, it is
Your 3
fiscally
minutes is up.
responsible.
Please summarize.
Yep. This is not only a humane policy, it is a fiscally responsible and evidence-based public safety reform. Thank you for your leadership and listening this morning.
Thank you very much. Questions, Representative Wood?
Kate, thank you so much. That is a wonderful addition and a much needed addition to be added to the task force. So while you were speaking, I did just text our attorney that is drafting this to make sure that we have 2 professionals that specialize in this, and I appreciate the feedback and sorry that we left that off.
Thank you. Any other
Thank you.
questions or comments? None online? Is anyone? I can see. Nope. Thank you very much for your testimony today.
Thank you very much.
I believe that's the end of our list, unless there's anyone lingering online that missed the turn. Madam Clerk?
I think that's about it today. No
Great.
one else is there. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for coming today, for lending your voices. And the next hearing is, I think, March 3rd? March 3rd is our next public hearing. So thank you very much for joining. This meeting is concluded.